Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Falus, founder of Promotable and your host for Breaking Into Data. So our guest today is Nicklas. I'm going to butcher your name, so please apologize. I apologize in advance, but Nicklas Ankarstad. Did I get it?
Ankarstad usually, in English, yeah.
You can tell me the proper way, and I'll try and not fuck it up again. Clearly, this is going to be made for cable. But yeah, I mean, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making the time. I think the best way to start out would be just, tell me a little bit about, what you do. I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions on, I think, data science is really cool. I know this is like a good career to be in, but I'm not a data person. I'm a marketer or a product person. Don't really know what that means. So I think a really helpful start would be just tell me about your day job. What do you do?
Sure. So technically, my job title is Senior Manager of Advanced Analytics and Business Intelligence. Realistically, what that means is I oversee teams that do data science as well as business intelligence. I think overall, my day-to-day is realistically just kind of team leadership, making sure that my teams do what they need to do to get their job done, as well as kind of help support them. We focus on the data science side on a couple of different things. We build predictive models using machine learning and AI and all those fancy buzzwords that we hear about. But then also, I oversee the business intelligence side, which is building dashboards, providing insights through visualizations tools like Tableau. In some cases, just building a report that answers a simple business question. So I kind of do a little bit of across the spectrum, and that's kind of me.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, could you dive a little deeper into, because you kind of sit in the middle of BI and data. Could you kind of talk about like maybe some of the problems that you're solving, or how you connect that data science side to your BI and kind of the reports you make for stakeholders, or kind of the kinds of dashboards you make, this kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's going to all depend on the business problem we're trying to solve. In some cases, we'll look at operational metrics. So we partner with our internal stakeholders, like our operations areas, to try and figure out how we can help them improve their business. For example, we built a dashboard not too long ago that helps our application or our loan originations team. So Aligned is a financial institution, so we work in the banking industry. A big piece of our revenue comes from people coming to us and saying, hey, I need to buy a new car, I need a new credit card, and stuff like that. Obviously, we lend money to people and make difference between the interest that we earn on loans and the interest we turn around and pay around on deposits. So a big piece of that is growing new business and making sure that we get the right business. Loans has a lot to do with, or lending has a lot to do with the likelihood that people will pay you back. So that gives you kind of a slew of a bunch of different use cases. So on the one hand, we want to attract as many people as possible within the rules of the laws and stuff like that. So how are we doing from an application volume? Are we getting the applicants we're looking for? Is the marketing funnels working appropriately? Are we getting applications? What types of loans are we getting? Are we getting riskier loans? Are we getting less risky loans? And then as well as further down in the life cycle of that, how do we manage those credit lines, for example? So when we're talking about credit cards, if you haven't paid your credit card bill in a while, which unfortunately a lot of people are going down that path now with COVID, if you haven't, you may get your credit line reduced. So that's usually a case of where analytics kind of come in and play a role. So from a lending perspective, we don't want to always lend to people who are unlikely to pay us back. We want to make smart investments so that we can share. And the credit union is very nice in that regard. We share our profits across with our members versus shareholders. So those are kind of some of the things, and it touches on all different things, from dashboards to kind of measuring those metrics, to all the way to predictive models to kind of help understand who we should do what actions with.
Perfect. Well, that kind of leads into another question I had, and because you have an interesting background in that you don't have like the traditional either computer science or like hard math, I guess, background where you just came in, did the engineering track. Tell me about, I know you were in finance at one point, Walk me through kind of what that looked like and what that transition was. Like, when did you think, hey, I want to take that next step, and kind of what is the next step? What's between financial analyst and data science manager, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Giving up Excel. It's like an addiction and you need to quit. No, all jokes aside. So kind of how I made the transition. So I got an opportunity to take over and run our data analytics and business intelligence team as kind of coming from, like you said, a financial analyst background. I think as financial analysts, and each role will always be different and stuff like that, you oftentimes get exposed to some of the core concepts of analytics. You get stakeholder interactions, you deal with ambiguity, you have to answer questions that have some sort of quantifiable nature that you need to answer relatively quickly. So you have a lot of those intangibles that make you a good data analyst, or not necessarily a good data scientist, but those are kind of building blocks in that. So you have those, as well as for me, the transition there is more about like kind of upskilling, right? So I took courses online and started studying a little bit more of that engineering statistics stuff. Picking up coding languages are a part of it. Diving into BI tools versus, like we talked about, Excel, and thinking more about how I do my work and thinking about refining my craft rather than focusing more about just producing outputs like ad hoc reports that answer specific business questions. So to me, the journey really starts with that inflection of like, all right, taking kind of toll of what you have and what you bring, and then say, all right, I want to be at point B. How do I get there? And for me, that was a lot of upskilling the things that I didn't get in like undergrad, right? I didn't study electrical engineering or computer science and stuff like that. So that was kind of that shift for me.
Cool. And what was for all the financial analysts who will be listening? What was that point where you decided, that's it? It's time for me to move on and kind of consider alternatives. So was there like a breaking point for you, or is it kind of a slow burn?
Yeah. So throughout my career, I've had opportunities to kind of do a little bit of BI here and there. I got some SQL exposures at other places, done some SSRS, but it wasn't never really my primary function. I realized once the opportunity was presented to me, I'm like, so what do I enjoy the most about work?
Yeah.
And to me, building something was very fascinating. Building, in the end, building data products and having those products be used is something that interested me. So that was kind of where it was a slow, gradual drip, if you will, to you were presented with an opportunity. Maybe this aligns much more closer to what you're looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the advantages I think that you have is that while you switched functions, you're still in the same industry. Do you think that having that financial analyst background helps you now as you're helping to create models and really solve those problems for a financial institution?
I'm going to say no to the financial analyst piece, but definitely working for the same company helps, right? So when you're making a switch, so imagine coming in and doing kind of the opposite of what I did, right? So I took a role in the same company, just doing more data analytics and data science and all that jazz. Imagine also not only having to do the more complicated statistical analysis and all those things, but also learning about the company, how it works, where the data is, and all those things that I kind of had to learn as a financial analyst, navigating the company. I think that's something that I benefited from more so than like, me being awesome at VLOOKUPs and, index match functions and all that stuff.
And the lookups are pretty cool. I don't know. I think the first time I learned to do that in Excel, I was like, oh man, I am the master at this.
But then you learned about joints and you realize VLOOKUPs have their limitations, right?
Exactly. And then you learn how much once you learn something, you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
And then you have to, then you quickly realize you have to start learning more. Yeah. I mean, because you said you took, lots of online classes or studying or what have you. Is there something that what do you think you don't learn from like these kinds of classes? You might learn how to do SQL queries, but is there something that you would say that you don't learn in your classes that you would learn on the job?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, those classes tend to focus a lot on like you get a pretty clean data set, you build a model, and it's like 99% accurate. What a lot of them don't really cover is, and specifically in the modeling, is like debugging. Like, this went wrong. How do I do this? Usually the instructions are Google it, put it in Stack Overflow, and figure it out, right? That's the stuff that like I think you really kind of end up learning. That's, on the job. And the other piece of it too is the ambiguity. Oftentimes in like structured learning environments, I think you get here's your clear goal. It's awesomely refined into something that is translatable to you. Like, go build this type of like application, next best word prediction, product recommendations, whatever they are, or a dashboard that covers these things. That doesn't really happen in real life. It's more so like, hey, I don't know if I understand how we're going to survive in this scenario. Can we figure something out with this? And maybe we need data. And you're kind of like, what am I supposed to do here? That what am I supposed to do head scratch, that teaches you a lot to like actually dive in and understand what your stakeholders are trying to solve, or the problems that they're trying to solve that they can't put into words because they're not data scientists, they're not data analysts, they don't understand how to articulate that. So that's something, those two things I'd probably say are the biggest things that are missing.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting. I wonder if we can dive a little bit deeper into that, because I think that's one thing that we don't really talk about in the data space is, what your different stakeholders want. They might ask you for one thing, but they might mean something different. Or how do you go about taking that question and then putting that into words that a data team might understand, or an action or an initiative?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to learn, right? So that's one of the things that I think I benefited from having been in the company, being a financial analyst. This is probably where I should have answered a little bit differently before. So a lot of cases, what ends up happening for us is you sit down with a stakeholder of some kind. They have either a rough idea what they're looking for. You dive in a little bit more deeper of like, what is it, the problem you're actually trying to solve, and how does this help our business? A lot of cases I try to ask the question of, if I don't do this, what happens? If I don't actually help you at all, if I say, this was a really nice meeting, thank you for lunch, always buy data people lunch, by the way. No, but if I don't do anything, what happens? If you don't get this answer, does anything change? And oftentimes, if the answer is no, I'm just going to make this decision anyways, then it isn't really worth doing anything, and you don't need to spend the time defining it. But if they say, well, if you don't help me predict whose credit card transaction is fraudulent or whatever, then we will lose a ton of money. And then you're going, oh, so realistically, my problem statement is I need to help you with this, and this is the return that will come from that. I find that just kind of starting the dialogue, that it sounds a little bit of a negative context, which again, kind of as an analytics person, you end up finding holes and stuff more so than you do look for positivity, right? But kind of diving into that, I think helps a lot.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think finding holes seems negative, but at the end of the day, if you find a hole you can plug, you've saved a bunch of money. And honestly, saving money is just as good as making more. Sometimes it's even better because it's post-tax. So, talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And kind of just like last couple of questions here. Going back to that initial journey, I have two kind of related questions. One is kind of kind of question, kind of cheesy question that you get asked, which is, is there any advice you'd give to someone who is like, I'm a financial analyst or a marketer, or wherever you're at, and you're like, hey, I know this is important. I don't know where to start or what to do. What would you recommend?
Yeah, probably say it's okay that you don't know everything. There's so much literature out there on all the different things. I am not an expert in like deep neural networks. There's a ton of different literature that talks about the whole slew of things, and there's so many articles you'll read that you're like, wow, that was Greek to me. And I think it's okay. Like I think a lot of cases we focus on there's this whole idea of the imposter syndrome and stuff like that. I think for me, the thing that would reassure me a little bit when I first started out is like, it's okay that you don't know all these things. You will, as long as you have a framework and you can pick up things as you need them and need to apply them in your work, it's okay. that you don't know everything.
Cool, cool. And then is there like one, like if you're super not technical, you're good at Excel, is there like, where do you think you should start? Should you go dive into SQL? Should you go and like try and teach yourself Python, or pick up Tableau? I know it's always hard to say one thing, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Sure. So I'm going to give you kind of a half cop out. No, I think it's going to depend on the industry and what you have, right? So if your company doesn't have Tableau and Power BI, but there may be some opportunities to crack open Python because you have Python. Usually it's the other way around. You can't get Python, but you can get Tableau.
Yeah.
I think find something that you can improve upon something you already do today with a new technology. Learn it through that, I think, is the best way. Not only just because you learn a new technology and learn how to do something, you also provide a little bit of value to your organization, which could lead you to more opportunities. Oftentimes you show that and say, hey, I automated this process by writing a Python script. They go, hey, I got 15 other processes. Do you want to automate those? And all of a sudden you're writing Python for a living.
That's a good point, actually, because I think we focus often a little too much on quitting your job and going to a new one. But often, if you can show value, that's by far the best thing. So listen, this has been a really, really great talk. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. There we go.